The Battle of Okinawa, fought from April 1 to June 22, 1945, was one of the most intense and pivotal battles of World War II in the Pacific theater. Often referred to as the Typhoon of Steel due to the sheer ferocity and scale of the combat, it was the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific campaign and a significant turning point that helped lead to the eventual defeat of Japan. The battle was fought on the island of Okinawa, part of the Ryukyu Islands, and was seen as a crucial stepping stone for the Allied forces preparing for an invasion of the Japanese home islands. Background: by early 1945, the Allied forces had made significant gains in the Pacific, including victories in battles at places like Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and Iwo Jima. The next objective was Okinawa, located about 340 miles from the Japanese mainland. Capturing Okinawa was crucial because it would provide a staging area for the anticipated invasion of Japan. It had airfields that could be used to launch attacks on the mainland, and it would serve as a base for naval and aerial operations. The island was defended by approximately 130,000 Japanese troops under the command of General Mitsuru Ushijima, including soldiers from the Imperial Japanese Army, the Imperial Japanese Navy, and local Okinawan conscripts. In addition to the defending forces, thousands of civilians lived on the island, and they would be tragically caught in the middle of the fighting. The Allied Plan. The Allied forces, commanded by Lieutenant General Simon Bolivar Buckner Jr., comprised around 180,000 soldiers and Marines from the U.S. Army and Marine Corps. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, led by Admiral Raymond Spruance, supported the operation, and the campaign would involve massive air and naval bombardments. The initial goal of the invasion was to secure the Higuchi beaches on the western side of Okinawa. The plan involved rapidly capturing airfields at Yontan and Kodina, and then pushing inland to defeat the entrenched Japanese forces. The invasion, April 1, 1945. On April 1, 1945, L-Day, the invasion of Okinawa began. In an impressive amphibious operation, U.S. troops landed on the beaches, virtually unopposed. The Japanese strategy was unlike previous battles. Instead of defending the beaches, they had fortified positions inland, in the island's rugged southern terrain, particularly around Shuri Castle, which was part of a defensive line. For the first week, the U.S. forces advanced relatively easily across the northern part of the island. They captured Kodina and Yontan airfields with little resistance and secured much of the northern half of Okinawa by mid-April. However, when the U.S. forces began their advance into southern Okinawa, they encountered fierce Japanese resistance. The battle intensifies. The southern half of Okinawa turned into a brutal, grinding battle of attrition. The Japanese defenders, well dug into caves, tunnels, and fortified positions around Shuri Castle, fought tenaciously. The U.S. forces had to fight for every inch of ground, using flamethrowers, explosives, and tanks to clear out the caves and bunkers. The Japanese defenders often launched nighttime raids and made liberal use of kamikaze tactics. Kamikaze attacks became a devastating feature of the Battle of Okinawa. Waves of Japanese suicide pilots targeted the Allied fleet, supporting the invasion, sinking dozens of ships and damaging many more. One of the most famous kamikaze attacks involved the battleship Yamato, the pride of the Japanese fleet, which was sent on a one-way mission to Okinawa to attack the Allied fleet. The Yamato was sunk on April 7, 1945, by U.S. aircraft before it could reach its target. Meanwhile, on land, U.S. forces made slow and costly progress. The battle was characterized by savage fighting in places like the Sugarloaf Hill, Conical Hill, and the Maeda Escarpment, Hacksaw Ridge. The terrain made movement and coordination difficult, and the well-entrenched Japanese defenders took a heavy toll on advancing US troops. One of the most heroic acts of the battle occurred at Hacksaw Ridge, where Desmond Doss, a conscientious objector serving as a combat medic, saved the lives of 75 soldiers during fierce fighting, lowering them down a steep cliff under enemy fire. The fall of Shuri Line. By late May, after weeks of heavy fighting and tremendous losses on both sides, the US forces managed to break through the Japanese defensive lines at Shuri Castle. General Ushijima and his forces retreated southward for a final stand. The Japanese defenders were pushed to the southern tip of the island, where fighting continued through June. Faced with overwhelming odds and no possibility of reinforcement, many Japanese soldiers, including General Ushijima and his chief of staff, General Isamu Cho, committed suicide rather than surrender. Civilian casualties. The civilian population of Okinawa suffered greatly during the battle. Many were forced to take refuge in caves and were caught in the crossfire. Tragically, Japanese soldiers often coerced or encouraged civilians to commit suicide, fearing brutal treatment at the hands of the Americans, though the US forces generally treated civilians humanely. It's estimated that over 100,000 Okinawan civilians were killed during the battle. Aftermath. The Battle of Okinawa officially ended on June 22, 1945, when organized Japanese resistance ceased. However, scattered fighting continued for a few more weeks as isolated Japanese soldiers refused to surrender. The cost of the battle was staggering. The US suffered over 12,000 deaths and more than 36,000 wounded. The Japanese lost around 100,000 soldiers, including many through suicide or banzai charges. Over 100,000 Okinawan civilians were killed. The Battle of Okinawa was one of the bloodiest battles of World War II, and its impact extended beyond the battlefield. The ferocity of Japanese resistance and the massive casualties suffered during the battle contributed to the decision to use atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The Allied planners feared that an invasion of the Japanese home islands would result in even higher casualties than Okinawa, which pushed them to seek an alternative means to end the war quickly. Legacy. Okinawa marked the last major battle of World War II. The island became a key military base for the United States and played a significant role in post-war geopolitics. Today, it serves as a reminder of the devastating cost of war, with memorials and ceremonies held to honor both the military and civilian lives lost during the battle. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to stay updated with more content. This content has been adapted from the powerful features of Polyspeaks for You, South Africa's leading accessibility software. Learn more at www.polyspeaksforyou.co.za. We invite you to support this meaningful dyslexic initiative, crafted and developed by an individual who personally understands the challenges of dyslexia.